In 2025, the landscape of WWE stands at a strange and sobering crossroads. Where once there was fire, momentum, and the sense that every week on television might birth the next chapter of a generation-defining story, now there is something else, a silence. A lull, a hesitance. Creativity, once overflowing and unpredictable, now feels measured, calculated, and in many places, lost. Gone are the sweeping highs of Sami Zayn's defiance. Absent is the emotional tension of Jey Uso struggling with identity, loyalty, and leadership. In their place are fragments of stories that begin without clarity and end without consequence. 2025 has not, thus far, delivered the kind of engrossing storytelling that made the WWE must-see during the Bloodline era. Even the turn of John Cena, perhaps the last great era-defining star of the ruthless aggression age, feels like a missed opportunity. His heel run, something fans fantasized about for over a decade, began with electricity. But it fizzled, not burned. The character evolution was incomplete. The storytelling, scattered. And rather than a seismic shift, it became a whisper in the storm. And Jey Uso, oh, Jey. A man who stepped from the shadows and into the spotlight with so much promise. When he captured the World Heavyweight Championship, fans felt that same surge they once did with Kofi Kingston, with Daniel Bryan, with Eddie Guerrero. The underdog had arrived. He had triumphed. And just as quickly as the flame lit, it was snuffed out. The abrupt end to Jey's reign felt more like an editorial note than a creative decision. It robbed fans of a journey. A champion's journey. One with challenges, with growth, with fire-forged character. Instead, the title moved along, and fans were left to wonder, what was the point? And yet, amid this creative drought, amid this search for something meaningful, a shadow looms larger than ever before. Roman Reigns. Even in absence, the man once known as the Big Dog commands presence. His silence echoes louder than most promos. His absence feels heavier than most appearances. Why? Because he represents the last time everything worked. He was the fulcrum, the storm's eye, the center of the most compelling wrestling story in 2 decades. The Bloodline saga was not just great wrestling television, it was transcendent storytelling. It was opera. Roman Reigns reinvented himself when wrestling needed it most. In the wake of COVID-19, when the industry was silenced, arenas emptied, and the energy of the live crowd stolen, Reigns returned with a quiet menace. No cheers, no posturing, no pandering, only purpose. He became the tribal chief. He looked into the camera, into the eyes of every viewer, and said, "Acknowledge me." And we did, not just because of the gold around his waist, but because of the truth in his performance. He believed every word, every motion, every glare. And through him, the entire Bloodline saga unfolded like Shakespeare with steel chairs. Paul Heyman, the eternal advocate, became a manipulative whisperer. The devil on Reigns' shoulder, feeding ambition, fear, paranoia. The brothers Uso, torn between family and freedom. Sami Zayn, the outsider who dared to belong. Solo Sikoa, the silent enforcer whose eyes told stories his mouth never would. Every layer, every turn, every betrayal. It was theater at its finest. And now, in 2025, that era has ended. But its shadow has not. Because in its absence, nothing has stepped forward to take its place. No story has rivaled its emotion. No character has touched its depth. No moment has replicated its weight. It is in that vacuum that Roman Reigns' legacy only grows. Not just as a wrestler, but as the storyteller. The man who turned heel, not for shock value, but for evolution. Who turned boos into brilliance. Who took the risk of silence and made it scream. The audience waits, impatient, hopeful, frustrated, because they've seen what's possible. They know what wrestling can be when everything clicks. And right now, it's not clicking. So they ask, where is the next great story? Where is the heartbeat of WWE? Who will carry the torch Reigns lit and held aloft for over 3 years? There are talents, plenty. Seth Rollins, Cody Rhodes, LA Knight, Gunther. But even with titles, even with main events, they have yet to strike that same chord. That combination of gravity and humanity. Of strength and suffering. Reigns suffered. He questioned. He demanded. And most importantly, he changed. And maybe that's what's missing now. Change. Not just character turns or championship trades. But true narrative shifts. Bold moves. Risks. The Bloodline saga was built on emotional violence. It was layered in realism, family, betrayal, tradition, and trauma. It touched fans because it mirrored life, dysfunction, loyalty, pain, forgiveness. It reached beyond wrestling. Today's stories often don't. They entertain. They amuse. But they don't cut. And that's why fans keep looking back. Because the past didn't just entertain them, it moved them. Roman Reigns did not do it alone, but he was the axis. Without him, the wheel spun. With him, it rotated with purpose. And perhaps, in the silence of his absence, the current generation of WWE creative can rediscover that purpose. Find that courage again. To take their time. To trust the characters. To risk the reaction. Because wrestling is not just about action, it's about emotion. And right now, emotion is missing. The echoes of Tribal Chief still bounce around arenas. Not because fans are stuck in the past, but because the present hasn't offered them anything greater. And that is the true mark of greatness. When your presence defines an era, and your absence exposes a void. Roman Reigns redefined what it meant to be the guy. Not with merchandise, not with cheap pops, but with truth, with vision. He proved that when wrestling is real, it is untouchable. In WWE, if it wants to rise again creatively, must not chase the Bloodline story, but understand what made it matter. Until then, Roman Reigns remains not just the tribal chief, but the creative conscience of a company trying to remember who it is.